On my birthday, my grandfather's lawyer visited me. He left you enough money to open your own shop, he said. I replied, what money? My parents' faces turned pale. What followed was complete chaos. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this story is going to make you want to throw your phone across the room. I'm finally ready to tell you about how my family screwed me over and how I made them pay for it. They treated me like garbage for years, while stealing money my grandfather left for me. Everything changed when my grandpa's lawyer tracked me down on my 19th birthday. Here's what went down. So picture this. I'm 24 male, the oldest kid in a family, where being born first was apparently my biggest mistake. My parents, Grace and Bobby, had their precious Princess Sophia 2 years after me. And from day one, this girl could do no wrong. I'm talking full-blown golden child syndrome here. Sophia decided she wanted to be a makeup artist when she was like 12. And suddenly, our house became her personal beauty empire. My parents dropped serious cash on every makeup palette, ring light, and professional brush set she pointed at. Meanwhile, I'm wearing the same 3 shirts to school because boys don't need variety in their wardrobe. The girl had her own Instagram account by 14 with professional photos that my parents paid some photographer to take. They'd drive her to makeup gigs for school events, proms, even random girls who wanted their face done for dates. They bought her a whole setup, professional chair, mirror with Hollywood lights, the works. Our garage got converted into Sophia's studio, while I had to work on my dirt bike outside in the rain. But here's the thing that really gets me. My parents would brag to anyone who'd listen about their entrepreneur daughter while I was right there, invisible as usual. Sophia's so talented, she's going to be famous. She's already making money. Cool story. Except the money she was making was about $50 a month while my parents invested thousands in her equipment. My dad Bobby was the worst enabler. He'd drive her to makeup supply stores and come home with bags of products that cost more than most people's rent. Investment in her future, he'd say. When I asked for basic tools to work on engines, I got, money doesn't grow on trees, Andrew. School events were my personal version of hell. They'd show up to every single one of Sophia's makeup showcases with flowers and cameras, posting about their amazing daughter on Facebook. When I placed second in a regional automotive skills competition, they were too busy driving Sophia to some makeup influencer meetup to even notice. The comparisons were daily entertainment in our house. Why can't you have direction like your sister? Became their favorite song. Sophia knows what she wants to do with her life. Yeah, well, Sophia also knew she had parents who'd fund whatever dream popped into her head. My mom, Grace, was just as bad, but in a more passive-aggressive way. She'd sigh dramatically whenever I'd come home with grease on my clothes from working on cars. I wish you'd find something cleaner to do with your time. This while Sophia had makeup stains on every surface in her room, and they thought it was artistic. The only person who got me was my grandfather, Isaac. During summer visits, he'd teach me everything about cars, engines, transmissions, bodywork. You've got magic hands, boy, he'd say, while we worked on his old Chevelle. Don't let anyone tell you different. Grandpa understood what it was like to build something with your hands. He'd started with nothing and built a successful import business. Real work makes real money, he'd tell me. All this fancy stuff your parents chase, it's just noise. Those summers were the only time I felt like I mattered. Grandpa would take me to car shows, let me help him rebuild engines, even taught me how to run a business. Someday you'll have your own shop, he'd say. I can see it. Then when I was 16, everything changed. Grandpa had a heart attack and died 3 days later. I didn't just lose the only person who believed in me, I lost my future too. Or so I thought. After Grandpa died, my life went from bad to straight garbage. Not only was I dealing with losing the one person who actually gave a damn about me, but my parents cranked up their "why can't you be more like Sophia" routine to 11. At 18, I enrolled in community college for automotive technology while working part-time at Tommy's Auto Repair. Tommy was this old-school mechanic who'd been fixing cars since the Carter administration. Gruff as hell but fair, and he paid me decent money to learn while I worked. Kids got good instincts, Tommy would tell customers when I'd diagnose problems faster than guys who'd been doing it for years. But try telling that to my parents, who acted like I was wasting my life getting dirty for a living. My daily routine was school from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., then work until 9 p.m. I'd come home exhausted, hands permanently stained with motor oil, back aching from being hunched over engines all day. Fair enough, that's what you sign up for when you choose this field. But what killed me was coming home to see Sophia's life getting easier every single day. Girl was 16 now and pulling in maybe $300 a month doing makeup for high school girls and the occasional wedding. But my parents treated her like she was running Apple. They bought her a professional camera setup worth more than my entire semester tuition, got her a brand new MacBook Pro for editing her portfolio. Meanwhile, I'm sharing a 10-year-old laptop with a cracked screen and buying my own textbooks. The worst part was listening to them plan Sophia's future over dinner. "We should get you into that fancy makeup school in LA," my mom would say. "The one that costs $30,000 but guarantees you work with celebrities." They'd discuss her career like they were her personal board of directors. When I mentioned wanting to eventually open my own auto shop, I got lectures about realistic expectations and the importance of steady employment. This from people who thought spending 30 grand for makeup school was a sound investment. My parents had this twisted logic where Sophia's career was creative and modern, while mine was just manual labor. Never mind that skilled mechanics make good money, and there's always demand for the work. Never mind that I was already earning more than Sophia while going to school full-time. The manipulation was constant and subtle. They'd make comments like, "We just want you to have options, Andrew," while funding every single one of Sophia's dreams. Or, "We worry about your future," while treating my chosen career like a phase I'd grow out of. Tommy saw what was happening at home and tried to help in his own way. "Your family doesn't appreciate what you do, but the customers do. Mrs. Johnson specifically asks for you to work on her car. That means something." He was right. I was building a reputation for being reliable and skilled. People started requesting me for their repairs. But recognition from customers doesn't pay for advanced certifications or the equipment you need to specialize in high-end European cars. I was stuck in this loop where I made enough money to survive, but not enough to really get ahead. Every time I saved up for something important, a certification course, better tools, anything that would advance my career, some family emergency would come up that somehow became my responsibility to fix. Meanwhile, Sophia got her nails done weekly, drove a car my parents bought her, and never worried about rent because she lived at home to save money for her business. The double standard was so obvious it hurt. 2 years of this grind wore me down more than I wanted to admit. I loved the work but felt trapped by circumstances. That's when everything changed in the most unexpected way possible. My 19th birthday fell on a Tuesday, which meant I got to celebrate by diagnosing why Mrs. Miller's Honda was making that grinding noise customers always describe as, "It sounds funny." Real exciting stuff. My family acknowledged the day with their usual enthusiasm level, somewhere between a root canal and jury duty. Sophia gave me a card she'd obviously grabbed from the gas station that morning. My parents managed a happy birthday over breakfast before launching into their daily discussion about Sophia's latest makeup tutorial that got 200 views on YouTube. Tommy let me leave work early, which was cool of him. "Go do something fun, kid. You've been grinding harder than guys twice your age." I appreciated the gesture, but fun costs money, and I was saving every penny for a certification course in European auto repair. I came home to find a strange car in our driveway, some expensive sedan that definitely didn't belong to anyone we knew. My parents were sitting in the living room with this Asian guy in a sharp suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a legal drama. "Andrew," my mom said when I walked in, "this is Mr. Miller. He's a lawyer from Grandpa's firm." Mr. Miller stood up and shook my hand with the grip of someone who meant business. "Happy birthday, Andrew. I've been looking forward to meeting you for quite some time." That was weird phrasing, but okay. I figured maybe there was some final paperwork stuff related to Grandpa's estate that needed my signature or something. I'd been a minor when he died, so maybe now that I was 19, there were loose ends to tie up. "Please, sit down," Mr. Miller said, opening a briefcase that looked like it cost more than my car. "We have quite a bit to discuss." My parents were acting strange, fidgety and nervous in a way I'd never seen before. Sophia was lurking in the hallway, obviously listening, but trying to look like she wasn't. "Andrew, your grandfather left specific instructions regarding his estate and your inheritance. Instructions that should have been carried out when you turned 18. "Wait, what? Inheritance? Grandpa had money, sure, but I'd never heard anything about an inheritance. My parents had told me he'd left everything to charity, except for some personal items that they'd take care of for me." Mr. Miller pulled out a thick folder and set it on our coffee table. "Your grandfather established a trust fund in your name when you were 12 years old. The funds were designated specifically for your education and to help you start your own automotive repair business." The room went dead silent. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the Kit Miller, the neighbor's dog barking outside, and my heart beating so loud I thought everyone else could hear it too. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked, barely believing this was real. "The trust was established with $150,000, plus accumulated interest over 7 years. The current balance is approximately $180,000. I'm pretty sure I stopped breathing for a full minute. That was enough money to not just open a shop, but to open a really nice shop with proper equipment and still have operating capital left over. But my parents looked like they'd seen a ghost. My mom's face had gone completely white, and my dad was staring at his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. There's just one problem, Mr. Miller continued, and his tone shifted to something much more serious. The money was released to your parents as your guardians when you turned 18. They were supposed to turn it over to you then, but according to my records, that transfer never took place. That's when my world imploded. My parents had access to my inheritance money for an entire year and never said a word. I looked at them, waiting for some explanation that would make this make sense. We were going to tell you, my mom started, but Mr. Miller held up his hand. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Andrew. There are some additional documents your grandfather wanted you to have. My parents started talking over each other, making excuses and trying to explain, but I wasn't hearing any of it. All I could think about was that grinding noise in Mrs. Miller's Honda and how I'd been working myself to death while sitting on enough money to change my entire life. Mr. Miller was watching my parents with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out before, and none of it had ended well. Mr. Miller suggested we go to his hotel to talk privately, and I was more than ready to get away from my parents' panicked explanations. They kept trying to stop me from leaving, talking about family discussions and working this out together, but Mr. Miller just smiled politely and said, Andrew is an adult now. This is his decision. The ride to his hotel was quiet, except for him explaining that he'd been Grandpa's personal attorney for over 20 years. Your grandfather was very specific about his wishes regarding you, Andrew. Very specific. His hotel suite was nicer than any place I'd ever been. Floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and a view of the city that made me feel like I was in a movie. Before we discuss the financial aspects, your grandfather wanted you to have this. Mr. Miller handed me an envelope with my name written in Grandpa's handwriting. He wrote this letter shortly before he passed away. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Grandpa's handwriting was as neat and precise as I remembered, and seeing it again brought back every memory of those summers working on cars together. Andrew, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and your parents probably tried to screw you over. Surprise, surprise. Listen up, kid. Your mom and dad are idiots who wouldn't recognize talent if it bit them on the ass. They think Sophia slapping makeup on teenagers makes her the next Steve Jobs, while you, who can actually fix things that matter, are just getting your hands dirty. Here's $180,000 to start your own shop. Not because I'm being nice, but because I'm tired of watching morons waste good potential. Your parents will try to get their grubby hands on this money. Tell them to go kick rocks. Don't let these clowns convince you that real work isn't good enough. While Sophia's playing dress-up, you'll be running a business that actually serves a purpose. Cars break down. People need mechanics. Makeup tutorials? Not so much. Your parents raised one kid who can build something and another who thinks Instagram followers pay the bills. Guess which one I'm betting on. Now quit reading and go show these people what happens when you bet on the right horse. Grandpa P.S. If your parents spent this money on anything stupid, sue them. I left you enough to hire a really good lawyer. I had to stop reading 3 times because I couldn't see through the tears. This was exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right moment, and it was like having Grandpa right there in the room with me. Mr. Miller let me finish the letter in silence, then poured himself a coffee and waited for me to process everything. Your grandfather saw this coming, he said finally. He knew your parents would try to interfere with his wishes. That's why he built in certain protections. He slid another folder across the table. This contains all the account information, transfer documents, and a complete breakdown of how the money has been managed. Your parents will no longer have any access or control. I opened the folder and saw more money than I'd ever imagined having. Account statements, investment summaries, and a breakdown showing exactly how much was available immediately versus what was in longer-term investments. There's one more thing, Mr. Miller said, and his expression turned serious. The records show some unusual activity on the account over the past year. Withdrawals that don't match the approved purposes outlined in the trust. My stomach dropped. How much? Approximately $35,000 has been withdrawn for educational and business expenses. I have the receipts your parents submitted to justify these withdrawals. He handed me another stack of papers, and as I flipped through them, my anger went from simmer to full boil. Receipts for Sophia's makeup equipment, her professional photography sessions, even that expensive laptop they'd bought her, all charged to my inheritance money under the justification of supporting family business development. They'd been stealing from me for a year, while lecturing me about responsibility and realistic expectations. Mr. Miller was watching my face as the reality sank in. I take it you weren't aware of how your inheritance was being used? They told me Grandpa left everything to charity except some personal stuff, I said through gritted teeth. They've been funding my sister's makeup career with money that was supposed to help me start my own business. I'm very sorry, Andrew. This is unfortunately not the first time I've seen families take advantage of trust funds this way. I sat there staring at the receipts, feeling like an idiot for believing my parents when they'd been screwing me over for years. But I also felt something else. Pure, focused anger that was about to become my fuel for what came next. Mr. Miller wasn't done dropping knowledge on me. He pulled out another folder that looked even more official than the first one, with the kind of legal paperwork that makes you realize how deep in the shit my parents really were. Turns out what my parents did wasn't just morally screwed up, it was straight up illegal. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, embezzlement. Mr. Miller rattled off legal terms like he was reading a menu, except instead of food, every item on this menu came with potential jail time. The original trust paperwork was crystal clear about what the money could be used for. My automotive education, tools and equipment for car work, and startup capital for a repair business. Period. End of story. Makeup brushes and ring lights weren't exactly covered under automotive equipment, no matter how creative my parents got with their paperwork. Mr. Miller showed me receipt after receipt where they'd basically committed fraud in writing. They'd taken Sophia's camera gear and called it diagnostic equipment. Her MacBook became computer systems for automotive education. These people had turned lying into an art form, except they were terrible artists. I was getting a crash course in legal consequences that made me realize my parents weren't just thieves. They were stupid thieves who documented everything. When you mess with trust fund money, apparently the courts take that very seriously. Like, this could destroy your entire life, seriously. Mr. Miller laid out my options with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times. I could go nuclear with criminal charges and civil suits, or I could give them one chance to fix this voluntarily. His recommendation? Let them hang themselves with their own rope by offering them a generous opportunity to return my money before we brought the full weight of the legal system down on their heads. We'd show up with all the evidence, give them a deadline to return every stolen penny with interest, and let them understand exactly how screwed they were if they refused. Most people become very reasonable when they realize their financial crimes are fully documented and ready to be presented to a judge. But I needed backup for this confrontation. Someone who could witness whatever bullshit my parents tried to pull and make sure I didn't get guilt-tripped into accepting anything less than complete justice. That's where Danny came in. My coworker was built like he bench-pressed trucks for fun and had the kind of quiet intensity that made people reconsider their life choices. When I explained how my parents had been stealing from me for a year, his reaction was exactly what I needed to hear. Man, that's some cold-blooded stuff right there. I'll come to your meeting. Someone needs to make sure these people understand how messed up this is. Having Danny in my corner felt like bringing a baseball bat to a pillow fight. My parents were about to learn that their days of manipulating me were officially over. What happened next was better than any legal drama I'd ever seen on TV. Mr. Miller laid out the evidence like he was presenting a case to a jury, and my parents' faces went through every stage of grief and fast forward. The next morning, Mr. Miller, Danny, and I showed up at my parents' house with a briefcase full of evidence and a very specific agenda. My parents were expecting me to come home apologizing for overreacting and ready to discuss things as a family. They were not expecting a lawyer with a briefcase and a very large, very serious witness. "Good morning," Mr. Miller said politely as my mom answered the door. "I believe we have some financial matters to resolve." The look on my parents' faces when they saw Danny standing behind us was priceless. "Andrew, what's all this about?" my dad asked, but his voice had that shaky quality of someone who knew exactly what this was about. "This is about the $35,000 you stole from my inheritance," I said, walking into their living room like I owned the place. Which, given how much of my money had probably paid for their furniture, maybe I did. "We didn't steal anything," my mom started, but Mr. Miller was already spreading documents across their coffee table. "Mrs. Williams, I have receipts for every fraudulent withdrawal, copies of the original trust documents, and a very clear paper trail showing exactly how you misappropriated your son's inheritance funds." The room went silent, except for the sound of my parents' world falling apart. First came denial. There must be some misunderstanding. We were told we could use the money for family educational expenses. Then anger. "This is ridiculous. We're his parents. We know what's best for him." Then bargaining. "We can pay it back over time. We just need to work out a payment plan." Danny sat there like a statue, taking notes on everything they said. His presence alone was keeping my parents from trying their usual manipulation tactics. They couldn't exactly pull the "poor us, How could you do this to family routine with a witness who could see right through their act? Mr. Miller was absolutely ruthless in the most professional way possible. He had receipts showing they'd bought Sophia a $3,000 camera setup and claimed it was automotive documentation equipment for my education. They'd purchased a $1,200 ring light setup and called it workspace lighting for mechanical training. The most ridiculous one was a $2,800 MacBook Pro that they'd categorized as diagnostic computer equipment for automotive education. Sophia used that laptop exclusively for editing makeup tutorials. Your creativity in misrepresenting these purchases is impressive, Mr. Miller said in a tone that made it clear this wasn't a compliment. However, creativity doesn't make fraud legal. My parents kept looking at me like I was supposed to jump in and save them from the consequences of their own actions. Like I was supposed to say, "It's okay, we're family," and let them off the hook. But you know what? I was done being their emotional safety net. They'd made their choices, and now they got to live with the results. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Miller continued. You have 30 days to return the full amount of misappropriated funds, $35,000 plus interest, which brings the total to $37,500. If you fail to meet this deadline, Andrew will file both criminal and civil charges. We don't have that kind of money, my dad said, finally admitting what everyone in the room already knew. Then I suggest you find it, Mr. Miller replied. Sell the equipment you purchased with stolen money. Take out a loan. Get second jobs. Figure it out. Sophia had been hiding in her room during most of this, but she finally came downstairs and saw all her expensive equipment being discussed as evidence of fraud. The reality of losing her precious setup hit her like a truck. You can't take my stuff, she said to me. I need that equipment for my business. Your business that was built with money stolen from me? I asked. Yeah, I absolutely can take it. That's when my parents started getting desperate. They offered to sign over their car to cover part of the debt. They promised to get jobs and pay me back monthly. They even suggested I could loan the money to them, and they'd pay it back with interest. Mr. Miller shut down every proposal. This isn't a negotiation. This is a notification of consequences. You have 30 days. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play, and it was going to hurt. There's something else, I said, looking directly at my parents. I'm opening my auto shop, and I'm doing it in this town. Everyone's going to know exactly what kind of people you are. Andrew, you don't want to do that, my mom said, panic creeping into her voice. Actually, I do want to do that. Tommy's already agreed to help me spread the word about reliable mechanics versus people who steal from their own kids. This is a small town, and word travels fast. Danny cracked his first smile of the day. Real fast, he agreed. My parents realized they weren't just facing financial consequences. They were looking at social consequences, too. In a town this size, reputation matters for everything from getting jobs, to getting loans, to just being able to show your face at the grocery store. As we prepared to leave, I had one final thing to say. You spent years telling me I needed to be more responsible and realistic about my future. Well, this is me being responsible for my own future. And realistically, you just learned that actions have consequences. Mr. Miller packed up his briefcase with the satisfaction of someone who'd done this exact thing many times before. 30 days, he reminded them. Not 31. Walking out of that house felt like walking out of prison. For the first time in my life, I had both the power and the resources to build exactly the life I wanted. And I was going to make sure everyone knew where those resources had really come from. The drive home from that meeting was dead silent, but you could practically hear my parents' brains melting down. They'd just been hit with a legal freight train, and the reality was starting to sink in. The guilt trip campaign started before we even got back to the house. My mom kept turning around in the passenger seat, giving me those wounded puppy dog eyes she'd perfected over the years. Andrew, honey, we can work this out as a family. There's no need to involve lawyers and make this so complicated. My dad jumped in with his classic disappointed authority figure routine. Son, I'm hurt that you'd go behind our backs like this. We raised you better than that. Family handles things internally. Sophia had been unusually quiet during the car ride, but I could see her in the rearview mirror, scrolling through her phone and probably calculating how much of her expensive setup was about to disappear. The math wasn't looking good for princess makeup. Once we got home, things went completely off the rails. My parents started tag-teaming me with every manipulation tactic they'd ever used. Guilt, shame, threats, promises, fake tears. They pulled out the entire playbook. We sacrificed so much for you kids, my mom sobbed. And this is how you repay us? By trying to destroy our family? You're being selfish and ungrateful, my dad added. That money was just sitting there while you figured out your life. We made sure it was put to good use. But Sophia's reaction was the real show. When the reality hit that her precious equipment was going to be sold to pay me back, she completely lost it. "This is so unfair," she screamed, throwing her phone across the room. "I worked hard to build my business. You can't just take everything away from me." "You worked hard?" I laughed. "With equipment bought with my stolen money?" "It wasn't stolen. Mom and Dad were investing in our family's future." She was actually crying now, mascara running down her face like a raccoon in the rain. Then she tried to get personal with it. "You're just jealous because I'm successful, and you're stuck being a greasy mechanic for the rest of your life. You can't handle that I'm better than you." That's when I realized how delusional this girl really was. She actually believed her own hype. In her mind, she was some kind of entrepreneurial genius, and I was the family loser who was sabotaging her success out of jealousy. "Successful?" I asked. "You make $300 a month painting faces. I make more than that in a day fixing actual problems." She completely snapped. Started throwing things around her room, screaming about how I was ruining her life and destroying her dreams. My parents just stood there watching their golden child have a complete breakdown, probably wondering where they went wrong. Over the next few days, the harassment got worse. Constant phone calls, texts, showing up at Tommy's shop to talk sense into me. My mom would cry every time she saw me. My dad would lecture me about family loyalty. Sophia alternated between sobbing apologies and furious rants about how I was destroying her future. They tried getting other family members involved: aunts, uncles, cousins, anyone who might be able to guilt me into dropping the whole thing. Most of them stayed out of it once they heard the details, but a few tried the blood is thicker than water routine. The funniest part was watching them scramble to come up with the money. My dad started working double shifts at whatever job would hire him. My mom took on extra hours cleaning houses. Sophia actually had to get a real job at some retail store, and let me tell you, customer service was not her strong suit. They tried everything to avoid selling her equipment, asked relatives for loans, looked into second mortgages, even considered bankruptcy. But Mr. Miller's 30-day deadline wasn't negotiable, and the clock was ticking. By week 3, Sophia was posting dramatic farewell videos to her Instagram, acting like she was some kind of martyr being persecuted by her evil brother. Her followers ate it up, leaving comments about how terrible I was for destroying a young woman's dreams. The whole thing was like watching a reality TV show, where everyone was the villain, except I had front row seats and they couldn't edit me out of the episodes. The 30-day deadline hit like a sledgehammer. My parents managed to scrape together most of the money by selling Sophia's equipment, taking out a loan against their car, and borrowing from relatives who still felt sorry for them. They were about $3,000 short, which meant Mr. Miller got to follow through on his promises about legal consequences. I won't lie, watching them scramble was better entertainment than anything on Netflix. My dad aged about 5 years and 1 month. My mom developed this nervous habit of checking her phone constantly, probably hoping some miracle solution would text her. And Sophia? Girl went from makeup influencer to retail associate faster than you could say, "Can I speak to the manager?" Mr. Miller handled the money transfer with the efficiency of someone who'd done this dance many times before. The full inheritance amount went into an account with my name on it, minus his legal fees and the costs of dealing with my parents' fraud. Seeing that balance for the first time was like winning the lottery, except better because I'd earned this victory. Finding the right location for my shop took about 2 weeks. I wanted something visible but not flashy, professional but not pretentious. The place I found was perfect: a former tire shop with good bones, plenty of space, and room to expand if things went well. Tommy helped me plan the layout and recommended suppliers for equipment. Danny was all in from day one, ready to leave his job and help me build something from scratch. We spent weekends getting the place ready, installing lifts, setting up the diagnostic equipment, making sure every tool had its place. The best part was picking out the sign: Andrews Motors, honest work, fair prices. Simple, direct, and everything my family wasn't. While I was building my future, my family was dealing with the aftermath of their choices. They'd moved out of their house into a smaller rental across town. Sophia was working at some makeup store in the mall, probably getting a real education in what customer service actually looks like. They made a few more attempts to contact me during this time. Apology texts, voicemails about healing as a family, even showing up at the new shop during renovation. But I was done with their drama. Every interaction just reminded me why I needed them out of my life permanently. The final conversation happened when my mom showed up at the shop one evening while I was working late. She tried the whole "I'm your mother" routine, talking about forgiveness and second chances, and how family should stick together. You had 19 years to be my mother, I told her, while continuing to organize my tools. You chose to be Sophia's manager instead. Now you get to live with that choice. We made mistakes, but we love you, she said, like that somehow erased years of theft and favoritism. I didn't even look up from what I was doing. You don't know what love looks like. She tried a few more approaches. Guilt, anger, promises about changing, but I was done listening. When she finally left, I locked the door behind her and got back to work. Andrews Motors opened for business on a Tuesday morning in October. No grand opening ceremony, no newspaper interviews, just me and Danny ready to fix cars and build something real. Our first customer was Mrs. Henderson from down the street, who needed her transmission looked at. By the end of the first month, we were booked solid. Word travels fast in a small town when you do good work at fair prices. No drama, no bullshit, just honest service from people who showed up every day ready to work. I changed my phone number and didn't give the new one to anyone in my family. Blocked them on social media, told mutual friends I wasn't interested in updates about their lives. When people asked about family drama, I just said, some relationships aren't worth maintaining, and left it at that. The inheritance money that was supposed to be stolen from me ended up being exactly what Grandpa intended. Startup capital for a business that let me build the life I wanted. Turns out the old man knew what he was talking about when he bet on me, instead of the people who thought I wasn't worth their time. 6 months later, I was making more money than my parents ever had, doing work I actually enjoyed, with people who respected what I brought to the table. Meanwhile, they were still dealing with the consequences of their choices, and that seemed exactly right to me. Some bridges are worth burning, especially when the people on the other side spent years proving they weren't worth the trip across.